It was a relationship born on the battlefield.
They had served together in Iraq. He was a handsome guy, and ladies liked the way he looked in a uniform.
She saw herself being an officer. She saw herself married. She saw herself one day with kids.
But those dreams are shattered when a string of mysterious disappearances rocks their tight-knit Southern community.
I've been calling you for several days, and you return my phone call.
You need to call somebody and let somebody know something, baby. Anybody heard from you?
You got two young women going missing between a week of one another.
This was a successful individual, young, her whole future in front of her.
She received her master's August the 12th, and, you know, it just didn't make sense. 4 days later, you gone.
But as this investigation picks up steam, a deadly discovery will bring everyone's worst fear to fruition.
Oh my God, this is a young girl.
This is a case that you don't normally see people that do this, unless you're Jeffrey Dahmer or somebody that has a very twisted personality.
I hope it's not that girl. Oh, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. He was a demon walking the earth.
Thursday, August 23rd, 2012. It's an early summer morning in a peaceful neighborhood just north of Columbia, South Carolina. But on this day, there's a buzz of excitement in the air.
It was the first day of school, so you had buses back on the road, you had kids walking to school, you had parents walking their kids to school, taking their kids to school.
At a home on the north side of town, a young mother named Kristen Brown is preparing to do just that.
Come on, get buckled up. Mommy's gonna be so late for work.
Okay, Mom.
Did you get your lunch?
Here's this woman, typical morning, getting ready to take her kid to school. While departing, she looks in the neighbor's yard, and what do you see?
Hold on.
There was a body in the front yard.
She was face down in the front yard.
Moments later, Kristen's frantic 911 call reaches area dispatchers.
I just found a dead female, black young female, right next door to my house.
You just found what, ma'am?
A dead, black young female in my neighbor's front yard.
She was in shock, and for a good reason.
It's crazy. Nice neighborhood. It's the first day of school. You know, excited about the school year, excited about doing new things, and someone leaves a body in the front yard of a home. It's crazy.
Even worse, Kristen fears she might recognize the victim.
Jesus Christ, I hope it's not this little girl. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
5 days earlier, a 15-year-old girl named Gabby Swainson had disappeared just a few miles from this location. Her disappearance was all over the news, and police issued a massive manhunt. Kristen had every reason to believe that it was her.
We've got help on the way, ma'am, okay? Just try to stay calm and the help will be there soon.
Jesus Christ.
But as authorities race to the scene, they know Gabby isn't the only young woman to have gone missing in Columbia during the past 24 hours.
The other young woman's name was Almanita Smith. She was a beautiful 26-year-old woman who was a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army and a master's student. Her family had reported her missing 24 hours earlier.
But just who was this person lying lifeless in the yard? And how had she gotten there? The answer will tear a hole in a family's heart and bring investigators face to face with a monster.
In 21 years of law enforcement, that was absolutely the worst thing that I'd ever heard.
Born in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1986, it was clear there was always something special about Almanita Smith.
She was very outgoing, very bright, compassionate, very smart, had quick wit, and was pretty much a born leader.
Anything she put her mind to and her heart to it, she did it. She was just that go-getter.
In fact, by the time Almanita hit high school, this doe-eyed beauty displayed a drive and maturity well beyond her years.
She's your typical teenager, but when it was time for her to take on life seriously, she took it on seriously, and she had goals. She had things that she wanted to do.
She was just stellar in school.
I mean, that was just her thing. That was real big to her. She was on the basketball team. She was on the track team. She was a wavette or a dance squad for the band. She played tennis.
She actually won homecoming queen. She was turning into this gorgeous little 5'3" woman.
And Almanita believed it was her destiny to serve in the United States military. After high school, she enlisted in the Army.
She saw herself being an officer. She saw herself married. She saw herself one day with kids. But more than anything, she saw herself making sure her mom and her dad were taken care of.
True to form, in just a few short years, Almanita rose to the rank of Staff Sergeant while earning a college degree and serving 2 dangerous tours of duty in Iraq.
She was very driven, very motivated. It's like, what's the point of doing it if you can't be the best at doing it?
After Almanita returned from Iraq, she settled in Columbia, South Carolina for grad school. She joined the Army Reserves, earned an MBA, and began working on another master's in education.
She's a homeowner. By the age of 24, with 2 degrees, MBAs, that's very impressive for someone her age.
She wanted to retire out of the Army. She went to school for business. Once she finished with her military career, she wanted to open up her own little club/restaurant. She just wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Although Almanita dated and had boyfriends over the years, she mostly concentrated on her career and education.
She dated, but that was secondary. She spent most of her time working on herself.
But in the spring of 2012, the blossoming beauty ran into a ghost from her past. 27-year-old California native, Marcus Bailey.
Almanita Smith?
Marcus, hey.
Hey, how you doing?
I've been good. How are you?
She had met him during a tour in Iraq.
Here's this guy, Marcus Bailey, another veteran. Handsome, the guy looks great in his uniform, but moreover, he could relate to her. They had something in common, and that was serving in the U.S. Army.
He told Almanita that he was still in the Army and that he was a drill sergeant stationed nearby Fort Jackson.
So, any plans?
Well, I always had dreams of being a club DJ.
When she met him, you know, he was doing well. He was nice. He's in the military as well. Very sweet, very focused, just a nice guy.
Over the next few months, Almanita and Marcus did their best to stay in touch.
When they would go to parties, they would see each other and would talk, casual conversation. But she told me that they wanted to be in a relationship.
I think there was just a period where she met him and kind of moved fast.
Almanita has this nice home, 4 bedrooms. She's 24 years old. She's got everybody but somebody to share this with. He needed a place to stay. She was lonely. They were dating. It only made sense in her mind that, hey, why don't you come live with me?
While it seemed like Almanita's life was a fantasy come true, the summer of 2012 brought with it an even more tangible accomplishment. On August 12th, she earned her master's degree in education from Columbia College.
She had just graduated with her master's degree, and the following week, she was supposed to go through an officer program.
It seemed like life was coming up roses for Almanita. That's why what happened next was so impossible to believe.
Her daddy and her mama was calling. The school had been calling, and that is when they realized something was wrong.
In the summer of 2012, Army reservist Almanita Smith was on the fast track to success in Columbia, South Carolina.
She had just graduated with her master's degree, and she was a top performer. She had the backing of her chain of command. They wanted to see her do great. They knew that she can do great. They just wanted to see exactly what the future held for her.
She was so driven. There are a lot of 25-year-olds that ain't doing nothing. And there are a lot of 40-year-olds that haven't completed or even remotely did half of what she had accomplished.
A string of accomplishments that Almanita happily shared with her love interest, Marcus Bailey.
She had reconnected with Marcus in the spring of 2012. They started dating, and he eventually moved into Almanita's home.
Everything was going great for her.
But that good life was about to take an unexpected and mysterious turn. It begins the morning of Wednesday, August 22nd. Almanita is scheduled to be in a class for officer candidate school, but she never arrives.
Whatever she set forth, all her goals, she wanted to accomplish them. So if there was someplace she had to be on time, she was gonna be there on time. Her classmates in the program was calling her, trying to find out where she was. It was unheard of.
Hey, Almanita, you weren't in class today, so I was seeing what was going on. Give me a call back.
That was completely unlike her. She was not gonna not go to school. She was a stickler for her responsibilities and what she needed to do. She would have not gone to school unless something had happened.
Almanita's classmates aren't the only ones concerned about her whereabouts.
Her dad had been calling her, and her dad couldn't get her. The school had been calling for Nita. They couldn't get her.
It was extremely out of character for her not to be in contact with her parents. Like, I know she talked to her daddy every night, like every day.
By that afternoon, there was still no sign of Almanita. It's then that her father, Harold Davis, makes a decision.
I called Nita's mom, and I called Richland County Sheriff Department. Ma'am, my name is Harold Davis. I'm calling from Tuskegee, Alabama. I have a daughter. My name is Almanita Smith. I haven't talked to her since Friday, and we normally talk every day or every other day. And I want to know if I can get someone to go by her home and check and see what's going on.
Okay, Mr. Davis, we're going to send an officer out there to see if they can try to make contact with her.
They send a deputy out, goes to the house, knocks on the door. Marcus answers the door.
Hi, I'm Officer O'Donnell. We're here to do a welfare check at this address.
For who?
For an Almanita Smith. You mind if we come on in?
Of course.
Are you aware where she is?
Well, she was here early today, but she went shopping. I wasn't aware that she was missing.
He was at the home by himself. He said that Almanita had left earlier that day at about 11 o'clock and had gone shopping. He said that she received a phone call from someone. He didn't know who. He said she went into a dark-colored Toyota and left. He didn't see the driver. The driver didn't come in. The driver just beeped the horn from outside and drove off.
Marcus says, well, she's still not back. Matter of fact, and putting it on the speaker, he tries to give her a call, doesn't answer the phone. Then he even sends a text message, but yet no response.
Do you mind if we look around?
Yeah, of course.
She did a cursory search of the residence. There at that point, didn't appear to be anything out of the ordinary.
While Marcus is talking to them, he remains calm, talks to them in a normal tone, and officers being trained to spot signs of domestic violence or struggle. When they looked at Marcus, there were no signs. There were no cuts. There were no bruises, no scratches. So things appeared to be as normal.
Well, thanks. If you hear from Almanita, do you mind having her call her father? He's pretty concerned about her.
Yeah, of course.
But just what had happened to Almanita? As the hours tick by that evening, no one seems to have an answer.
I had called a couple of her friends, and they hadn't seen her.
At this point, nobody knows who this potential guy in this dark car is. Family doesn't know, Marcus doesn't know. We're just following a story down a rabbit hole.
She would have not gone away with someone without someone knowing. I mean, she would have called.
But for officers at the Richland County Sheriff's Department, there's further cause for concern. Almanita isn't the only young African-American woman to have gone missing in Columbia this week.
At this same time, there was a missing teenager that had been missing in the neighborhood.
5 days earlier, a young girl named Gabby Swainson had disappeared. She was all over the news. This was a reoccurring story. Nobody knew where she was.
She had been missing for a while. We had believed that she had been kidnapped by someone that's close to the home.
They had organized searches, manhunts. You know, people were out trying to figure out where was this young girl.
Is it possible these two disturbing disappearances are connected? At this point, no one knows for certain.
Almanita's friends and family were deeply concerned. What are the odds of two young African-American women going missing in the same area in the same week?
But in less than 24 hours, a sickening discovery will close a chapter on one of these two missing person cases and open the door to a baffling murder investigation.
It was a shocker to me. I got a phone call from my sister, and it was awful.
That was the worst day of my life.
In less than a week, two young African-American women have gone missing in Columbia, South Carolina. The first person was a 15-year-old cheerleader named Gabby Swainson. Then, just 5 days after her disappearance, 26-year-old Almanita Smith, a beloved Army veteran, vanished as well.
Richland County is kind of a small town atmosphere. It's a very small town. People know each other, people care for each other. That's one of the things that we're known for. And you have something like this happen, it scared the community.
It was a real sense of helplessness. I didn't know what to do.
Almanita's father, Harold, is less indecisive. On the night of August 22, 2012, he makes plans to drive up from his home in Alabama to search for his daughter.
I just felt something bad. I was gonna leave. I started to leave that night, but I really wasn't prepared. So I was gonna leave the next morning.
Harold and his family spend a restless evening in Alabama. But on August 23rd, before they can leave town, a discovery 300 miles away changes everything.
At 6:45 a.m. on August 23rd, a woman named Kristen Brown was leaving her home in North Columbia to take her daughter to school when she saw a body lying in her neighbor's yard.
Kristen's ensuing 911 call leaves little speculation as to the identity of the female victim.
Oh my God, this is a young girl.
Hey, we're getting everyone on the way, all right?
And she's a sweet girl. Oh my God.
She thought maybe that was the missing person that we were looking for. This was the missing teen.
Everybody thought it was Gabby Swainson.
That's the first thing that came to my head. We found her, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
But just before first responders arrive at the scene, a man races from the front door of 613 Heron Glen Drive. It's Marcus Bailey.
Marcus, he comes outside, and his reaction immediately is he starts sobbing. He's emotional. She was face down in the front yard. He rolled her over and was able to recognize her.
The victim isn't Gabby Swainson as everyone fears, but Marcus's girlfriend, Almanita Smith.
She's laying face down. He goes out and throws a blanket over the body. He was having chest pains, having a reaction to seeing the corpse.
Stand on up, bud. Come with me.
He was having some kind of an attack. They took him to the hospital to get him evaluated.
With Almanita's grieving boyfriend now removed from the scene, investigators take their first look at their victim. And what they see isn't pretty.
It was very hot outside, and Almanita was in this state of decomposition.
The body was in a decomp state of excessive swelling, especially around the face. The tongue was swelled out of her mouth. Her limbs, you could tell, had an excessive amount of fluid in them, along with the abdomen area and the legs.
Everything starts to decompose at a different rate, but you can tell the process is in motion. Again, it's South Carolina in the summer. It was August. It's hot.
Any obvious sign of how she was killed?
But Almanita's state of decomposition presents investigators with a problem.
They couldn't get a definite cause of death. Probably could have been a strangulation. She wasn't stabbed, she wasn't shot.
And then there's the question of how Almanita's body ended up where it did. Could the mystery man she allegedly left her home with the day before have intentionally placed her here?
This is an odd case. This is a case that you don't normally see people that do this unless you're Jeffrey Dahmer or somebody that has a very twisted personality.
It suggests some kind of message. Why would someone take her away and cause her harm and then bring her back and lay her in the front yard without there being some kind of significance to that?
While Almanita's body is transported to the Richland County Medical Examiner's office for an autopsy, news of her death has reached friends and family.
Her death, great loss. It It did exactly like a tsunami, an earthquake. She touches so many people's lives. It devastating.
I was called at 9 o'clock that morning and drove straight to her house. I mean, it was a surreal experience for me.
While those close to Amanita begin to converge at her home, Detective Martin heads to the hospital to have a chat with Marcus Bailey.
At that point, he said that he wanted to speak with us.
I know this is a very difficult time for you, but are you comfortable answering some questions right now?
Yes, sir, I'll try.
He said Amanita was a really good person. She had just graduated from college, and she was in the process of being selected for an officer's position in the Army.
While Marcus seems genuinely upset by Amanita's death, investigators want to hear his story again.
We asked him the last time he saw her again. He said he saw her on the 22nd at about 11:30, and he said that she had left with this mysterious person.
I didn't really get a good look at his face.
So you're in a relationship with Amanita together, yet you're okay with her going off with a strange man?
It's kind of complicated.
He said that they had an open relationship. Sometimes they would be together, sometimes they'd be with other people. And she was allowed to kind of do whatever she wanted to do.
She still allowed me to live there, as long as I paid the rent.
But it's what Marcus says next that's the most alarming detail to investigators.
He said, well, she was picking up men on Craigslist. Men were buying her things.
The obvious fear is that maybe Amanita met somebody online, and that this person isn't just responsible for her death, but Gabby Swainson's disappearance as well.
It's not unusual for people online to exaggerate the truth about themselves a bit, let alone be totally opposite of who they really are.
But had this beautiful Army veteran really waded into the dangerous waters of online dating? That answer and more was about to swamp this investigation, leaving detectives to sort out the carnage of ill-chosen love.
This isn't what you do to people you love. This isn't how you treat people you love.
On August 23, 2012, a family's worst nightmare comes to fruition when missing 26-year-old Army reservist Amanita Smith is found dead in the front yard of her home.
She had a bright future. Anything she wanted to do, she could have done.
It sickens you because you think about the victim, and she had a very successful future. She had a very big future. She was doing so many things to make herself better, to prepare for her life.
It's a life that everyone agrees has ended far too soon, making detectives more determined than ever to catch Amanita's killer. But having just interviewed her boyfriend, Marcus Bailey, identifying this individual may not be easy.
Marcus said he and Amanita were in an open relationship and that she was meeting other people online. He said Amanita left the day before her death with a man he had never seen before.
Back at the crime scene, investigators begin questioning Amanita's friends and family for the first time. When investigators ask about Amanita's dating life, they find it difficult to believe that the straight-laced overachiever would have been so reckless.
She don't meet strangers. She don't meet people on dating sites, Facebook, Instagram, or any of those things. That's not who she was.
As for her relationship with Marcus, they say at first, Amanita had a hard time resisting the charms of her strapping soldier.
I think she met him, and he's one of those people where if that's your thing, he kind of looked right on paper.
But others say their first impression of Marcus left much to be desired.
I can honestly say when I met this character, I was not happy, and I told her that. I thought he was a loser.
The way he dressed, the way he drank all the time, the way he interacted with her. I mean, he was just a thug. That's the bottom line. He was a thug.
But Amanita apparently saw something in Marcus that she liked, and she wasn't one to back down from a challenge.
She has a very good heart, very big heart. Maybe she could help him change. That is the impression that I got, that she could help him change.
For the first few months, friends say it seemed like their lives were on solid ground. But then Amanita learned the truth about Marcus's military record.
She found out about some stuff that he was keeping from her about his past.
The military is really a small world. It's like 2 degrees of separation.
And the truth of the matter, friends say, is that Marcus had been living a lie all along.
Marcus Bailey had been dishonorably discharged for fraternization, meaning that he was having relationships with the enlisted personnel that he was supposed to train.
He was sleeping with privates. When you're a drill sergeant, you are not supposed to have any type of sexual contact at all.
A fact Marcus failed to share with Amanita.
Last text she sent me about him, she said, I found out that he was not who he say he was.
He had let her believe that he was being demoted, but he had already been kicked out in the whole nine because, you know, the military doesn't play that anymore.
I heard that he was actually getting up, putting on his uniform every day like he was going to work. And he was still representing himself as if he was an active duty soldier.
He got kicked out. He didn't have anywhere to go. He couldn't find a job. He wasn't working or anything.
But besides misrepresenting his own work and military record, it turns out Marcus had another secret. And this one, friends say, was a doozy.
Who's this Janelle that keeps texting you?
Nobody.
Nobody. I don't believe you. Who is she?
Marcus was in fact married to a woman that lived in Colombia.
Your wife?
Although he was estranged from his wife, he had a young son, and she was pregnant with their second child.
When were you going to tell me that?
It's over with.
It's over with.
Yes.
She started to see him and what was going on with him for who he was and had decided she didn't want that to be a part of her life.
Come on, baby.
Don't baby me. We're done. You can pack your stuff and you can go.
When she finally found out, she wanted him to move out.
Where am I go, huh?
But she felt bad because he didn't have a place to go. So she just let him stay there, move into the other room until he was able to get on his feet.
She was trying to help him.
As for the contention that Amanita and Marcus might have had an open relationship, her family doesn't buy it.
Never. Never. So either she was with you or she was without you.
To investigators, Marcus sounds like a cancer in Amanita's life. But that still didn't mean their topsy-turvy relationship had culminated in violence. Then, on August 24th, detectives receive Amanita's autopsy report.
4 to 7 days.
Her body had been dead for days. She had been in that state of decomposition. It just wasn't possible that she was alive and well and walking the day before at noon. The lack of the insects being on her suggests that she wasn't outside. It looks more like she was stored in a house.
But as another piece of this investigation falls into place, there's a far darker chapter of this story that's yet to be told. One so terrible, it's unforgettable.
It's like looking at the devil, like soulless, like there was nothing there.
An autopsy report has just found that 26-year-old military reservist Amanita Smith died at least 3 days before her body was discovered in the front yard of her Columbia, South Carolina home. A fact that seems to contradict Amanita's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Marcus Bailey's statement to police.
He said he saw her on the 22nd at about 11:30, and she was getting dressed up and leaving the house in this mysterious car. The position of the body and where the fluid was inconsistent with what he was saying.
But phone records offer investigators another insight into Amanita's love life.
We tried to follow up with, well, who would this person be, this mysterious phone call? Well, there wasn't a phone call there that came in.
In fact, what Amanita's phone records do show is that her family and friends became concerned about her whereabouts as early as August 17th.
I'm trying to get in contact with you. I hope everything's okay. Yeah, but you need to call me back. 2 days. This is ridiculous. If you're going to go on a disciplinary act, you need to let everybody know.
Yeah, you need to call somebody and let somebody know something, baby. Anybody heard from you, everybody's calling around, you let somebody know if you're all right.
And we believe that she was last seen on the 16th, late hours of the 16th.
But just what transpired between the time Amanita had disappeared and the time her body was found on August 23rd? To unravel that mystery, detectives pull Amanita's bank and credit card records.
So we've got charges on her card during the time the autopsy report says that she's dead, including one in North Carolina. What do you think of the chances? We've got some videos.
Yeah.
When police review the security cam footage, it's not Amanita they see on a 6-day shopping spree.
On video, we have images of Marcus using the credit cards.
There were clothing receipts where he had gone and made some purchases with her credit card. I believe there was a couple other receipts there. There were ATM receives.
Then on August 19th, Marcus's 27th birthday, he really dropped some cash.
He went to a nightclub. When he started spending money at this nightclub, the bill was close to $500.
He had a birthday party for himself. Bought out sections in the club and bought out bottles and was just buying bottles for people.
The next night, he takes them to North Carolina. And again, he's using Almanita's credit cards. And they go into a nightclub and they spend another large sum of money, and then he takes everybody out to breakfast.
And this was during the period that her father couldn't get a hold of her.
In light of their growing suspicion, detectives decide to execute a search of Almanita's home. Almost immediately, they notice something very odd.
There was a lot of air fresheners. A lot of air fresheners in there.
You're almost smacked in the face with this air freshener. There was just so many different smells and coverings going on in this room. They were competition. It was not so much nauseating, but it was just overwhelming when you first walked in the door.
But underneath all that industrial aroma is a smell seasoned investigators are all too familiar with.
You smell that?
Yeah. It was a decomp odor. It was the smell of death.
There's nothing like it. There's no mistaking it. You smell it once, you'll know again 20 years down the road. When you smell it, you'll know. You can't mask it.
When I opened up the dryer, there was a blanket, just like the one that had been placed over her body by Marcus Bailey, and the smell of decomp coming off of that was excessive.
I think we call them the cadaver dogs.
I think you're right.
This is a dog that looks for decaying flesh and human flesh. It doesn't look for anything else other than that.
As the dog makes its way around the home, its well-trained nose soon locks in on two specific rooms, Almanita's master bedroom and a spare bedroom down the hall.
It alerts to this room, and it alerts to this bedding, and it alerts to the different parts of the house, saying that a body had been stored there.
If the dog could talk, it would have definitely said, this has been here for a while.
Investigators suspect the transporting of the body caused the pungent odor to waft through the house, which explains why officers didn't smell the stench during their initial cursory search. When investigators searched the garage, it appears that Marcus had been preparing to make a fast getaway.
His clothing was all in bags next to the car in the garage. Inside the car were her credit cards, her military ID, and other things.
While officers continue their search of the premises, they know one burning mystery is finally over.
The evidence was telling us specifically that it was not a whodunit. It was obvious that he was the one that had done this, the one that had killed her.
That afternoon, police arrest 27-year-old Marcus Bailey for the death of his former lover, Almanita Smith.
He was arrested at the hospital. I was mad. I was really mad.
I don't think this is domestic violence, and that's something that I've kind of been on the fence about since this happened. This was just murder, flat out, cold-blooded murder.
While family and friends try to come to grips with the chilling truth, the full spectrum of Marcus's betrayal would soon be illuminated and would shine a light on pure evil.
The dude just had to be nuts. Couldn't be no other explanation besides that you crazy. But then you get out and you live in life while she dead and gone. The fact that he picked up a woman and brought her back to her home was the part that was sickening.
On July 23, 2013, 27-year-old Marcus Bailey's murder trial gets underway inside a Columbia, South Carolina courtroom. Marcus stands accused of killing his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Army reservist Almanita Smith, in August of 2012, a crime that sickens the entire community.
I never would have thought I would be burying my baby. To know that someone, this young man, Marcus Bailey, decided to play God, he took a lot from me.
She had a bright future. She had the world. Anything she wanted to do, she could have done. And he took that.
Prosecutors say Almanita's murder was one final betrayal in a rocky romance rife with lies and false promises.
Marcus wasn't in the military as he led Almanita to believe. In fact, he was dishonorably discharged and wasn't working. And he was still married to another woman with a baby on the way. In a nutshell, Marcus wasn't the man Almanita thought he was.
Here we have two different people. You've got Almanita, whose military career is growing. She's getting commissioned as an officer in the Army. She just finished college. She owned her own home. She owned her own car. She was being successful and had a mission and a dream. And you've got Marcus. He's got nothing.
I think he was jealous of her.
And while Almanita's head was probably telling her to let Marcus go, it was her heart, prosecutors say, that enabled Marcus to remain in her home.
He didn't have anywhere to go. He didn't have any money. He didn't have a job, couldn't get a job. She was just helping him to get back on his feet.
I believe Almanita had drawn a line in the sand. You're gonna mow the yard. You're living here for free. You're gonna do this.
Prosecutors believe Marcus balked at Almanita's demands sometime on the night of August 16th, 2012.
They had guests that evening who came over on the 16th.
So, when are you gonna mow the lawn?
I told you I'd get to that.
Get to it when?
And Marcus was saying that he wasn't going to mow the yard. It was his birthday. He didn't want to mow the grass the next day.
They were arguing during that time about him not doing his share around there and so forth. I believe that he probably murdered her that night. Probably after the friend left, they had an argument, and that's when it occurred.
I'm sick and tired of you always complaining all the damn time. You always
really?
damn complaining about every single thing.
We'll never know if it was just an argument that escalated or if he planned to kill her that night. And that we won't know because we weren't in the room, and I can't ask Almanita.
You do nothing.
Do not. Yo!
Get off of me!
I said, what? Shut up!
She's not breathing. You didn't call 911. You didn't try to help her. You didn't try to save her. You just let her rot like she was nothing.
He didn't have her nagging at him anymore. He was able to do what he wanted to, and he did. He went and partied all week, and he spent all her money.
I just think it was insane. It further cemented to me what his motive was. Like, you just wanted her money.
But prosecutors say the depths of Marcus's betrayal were truly sickening.
When he goes out and parties with the nightclub, he's picked up some random girl and had sex in Almanita's car. And then he goes and he picks up the clerk at the clothing store, and he takes her back and has sex with her in Almanita's home. We were able to validate that. She did have sex at that time, but she became suspicious a little bit about him because he wouldn't let her go upstairs.
Let's go upstairs.
And she was like, well, let's go upstairs to the bedroom. He wouldn't let her go upstairs.
We know that he had sexual relations with another female in the house when the body was upstairs.
In 21 years of law enforcement, that was absolutely the worst story and the worst thing that I'd ever heard. Being there, animal, sure, sheer animal.
This twisted trip finally came to an end on August 22nd.
The father had called him on the 22nd, had called 911, and then I think the rush kicked in that it was time to place the body out front.
A theory, prosecutors assert, that's bolstered by the trove of evidence that police recovered.
There was video footage of Marcus using Almanita's car and credit card. There were also positive hits by the police cadaver dog inside the home and on the blanket recovered inside the dryer. The evidence that Almanita died inside the house and was stored there for multiple days was overwhelming.
But despite what looks like an impossible case, Marcus's defense attorney does what he can under the circumstances.
It was the defense's idea that, yeah, I did do a lot of bad things. I may have cheated on this person. I may have used this woman's credit cards. I may have brought other women into the house, but that doesn't mean I killed her.
They wanted to attack the cadaver dog, and they wanted to attack the science, and they wanted to attack the neighbors and the witnesses and the friends, and they wanted to say all these people just, randomly had gotten together to kind of do this to Marcus and cause Marcus all this grief.
Finally, on July 31st, 2013, the case goes to the jury. 3 hours later, they return with a verdict: guilty.
Marcus Bailey was sentenced to 50 years in prison.
50 years sounds like there's a hope that you might get out. It just feels like there's hope that you might live to get out, and I don't want him to live to get out. I want him to die in prison.
He's a sociopath, calculated, cold-blooded killer is what he is. I hope he rots in jail. I really do.
For Almanita's friends and family, the punishment can never fit the crime. nor fully explain the actions of a wolf hiding in sheep's clothing.
Was it worth it? Was it worth taking her life? You know, was the outcome worth you taking somebody so rare, so special, you know, from this earth?
He didn't just take anybody. He took somebody that was special. She was an asset to everybody she touched, and that's who he took.
When you look at me, you don't see me. You see God's grace and mercy. That sustains me every day. There are times I feel like I just want to lose my mind, but I know I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay.
But in the wake of this tragedy, while Amanita's family was still healing, the residents of Columbia, South Carolina were forced to weather another tough blow.
A boyfriend of Gabby Swainson's mother, the teenager that disappeared the same week that Amanita did, ultimately confessed to killing Gabby and was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
There was no connection between Gabby Swainson's case and Amanita's case, but the good news is both families got justice in the end.
An inheritance of $350,000. They lived a fantasy life. But dreams die hard when the money runs out, and that is when the nightmare began. We found a single gunshot wound to the forehead, no exit wound, confirming it was cold-blooded homicide. By the time we tracked Barbara to Virginia Beach, she was working at a 7-Eleven and still cashing her dead sister's checks. She told us she had no siblings, that she did not know a Deborah Burns. It is laughable. Can you believe that? This woman tried to erase her entire existence, but the truth has a way of coming to light. When we pressed her, the wall crumbled and she finally confessed. She spoke of the constant arguments, the demands for money, and a life that never provided a single moment of respite. On August 14th, the day of Deborah's 40th birthday, they had a violent confrontation. Barbara could not take it anymore. She retrieved a gun, walked into the bedroom they shared, and committed an unforgivable act. Then, she lived with her sister's body for 6 weeks, surrounded by cheap scents to hide the rot. To live alongside a corpse for 6 weeks, eating and sleeping just inches away, that is not the act of a sound mind. Barbara eventually pled guilty to manslaughter and received a 15-year sentence. A tragic end for a woman who once loved her sister more than anything. It is a heartbreaking lesson on human nature, on how circumstances can turn a kind heart into a devil. Some people spend a lifetime building something, only to destroy it in a single moment of weakness. The truth is, you never really know what is hidden behind closed doors of a home, until the smell of death finally starts to seep through the walls. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. Sometimes it is over money, sometimes over pride, and sometimes just because they are bored with their own miserable existence. You sit across from them, you look into their eyes, and you realize they have stripped away every ounce of humanity they once possessed. You have to be kidding me. I tell you, this case was a tragedy, a cold, calculated betrayal that left a good man lying in a ditch, all because of a bunch of birds and a hollow heart. Fred Brown was a good man, not the kind who just says he is nice, but the kind who actually lives it. A veteran, a professor, a man who believed in his vows and his family. Everyone who knew him spoke of his kindness. But behind closed doors, in the quiet of a home in High Point, North Carolina, a dark rut was spreading. Patricia Brown, his wife, had decided she was tired of her life. She grew up with nothing, and when she found security with Fred, she thought she was set. But then the health issues came, the heart surgery, the fear of mortality, and then the birds, 50, 60 of them, filling the house with noise and chaos, draining the savings and driving a wedge between them. It is a pathetic sight, really, when you see a person choose exotic creatures over the man who stood by them for 20 years. Major Tom Shepard found Fred face down on the side of the road on an April morning in 1991. 2 shots to the head, 1 to the back, a footprint on his back. That is not a robbery. That is an execution. You do not get that close to a stranger unless you are putting them down like an animal. We looked at the family first. Naturally, that is just basic law enforcement. But Patricia sat there dry-eyed and cold, painting a picture of a perfect marriage. She had an alibi, and for a while, she slipped through the cracks. It was infuriating. You feel it in your gut when you are looking at the devil, but the evidence, it just was not there. Then came the break from the unlikeliest place. A man named Leroy Wetzel, a lowlife with a criminal record and a violent temper, sitting in a jail cell in Pennsylvania. He had written it all down in letters to be opened only when he died, but he could not wait. He had been promised $30,000 to end Fred Brown's life, all because Patricia wanted the insurance money and the freedom to live her twisted life with her birds. Leroy, the ex-husband of Patricia's sister Sheila, thought he was a hitman. He lured Fred out to a lonely highway under the guise of car trouble, shot him in cold blood, and then had the audacity to call Patricia to confirm the job was done. When we interviewed Leroy, he was a small man with a long white beard and a history of nothing but trouble. He admitted it all. He told us how Patricia had hounded them for months. She was the architect. She was the one who pulled the strings. She was greedy and she was empty. When we finally brought her in, she did not even blink. She knew we were coming. She had built her own prison long before a jury ever put her in one. Fred Brown was a decent, honest man, the kind of person who makes the world better just by being in it. To see him extinguished because his wife couldn't handle a little debt and some domestic friction, it makes you sick. People talk about the sanctity of life, but then they turn around and trade it for cash and feathers. You have to be kidding me. That is the reality of murder. It is not some grand cinematic event. It is usually just small people doing incredibly ugly things. Fred did not deserve to die in a ditch. He deserved to live out his days with the people he loved. But greed is a powerful disease, and in the end, it claimed everyone involved. Patricia Brown died in prison, and the rest of them spent their lives behind bars. And for what? A few birds and a dream that was never going to come true. My. It is a dark, cold world sometimes, and I tell you, I have seen too much of it to ever truly be surprised by what a human being is capable of. The stillness of an Arlington morning in June of the year 2012 was shattered not by the bustle of a thriving immigrant community, but by a scene of incomprehensible brutality that would haunt even the most seasoned homicide detectives for years to come. When the elderly couple, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee, were discovered hog-tied and suffocated within the confines of their own bedroom closet. The initial investigation navigated a landscape of confusion and staged deception. The residence, found in disarray with traces of marijuana and a blue bandana prominently displayed, was meticulously dressed to mimic a gang-related robbery gone awry, a calculated attempt to misdirect law enforcement and mask the cold, methodical nature of the crime. For the responding officers, the sight was nothing short of a nightmare, a stark departure from the peaceful, hard-working life this Vietnamese immigrant family had built since arriving in the United States at the turn of the millennium. As detectives delved deeper, they confronted not only the visceral horror of the murder scene, but a complex web of spiritual desperation and human greed that had ensnared a family chasing an elusive American dream. The emotional core of this tragedy lies in the profound vulnerability of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee, a couple whose devotion to their family and heritage led them into a perilous reliance on a self-proclaimed spiritual advisor from Houston named Daphne Wright. Caught in the downward spiral of a failing commercial sewing business, the couple and their son-in-law, Chow Tran, sought solace in the ancient mysticism of their homeland, hoping to lift the perceived curse that plagued their financial fortune. This desperation, however, became the conduit for a predatory relationship, as Daphne Wright exploited their fears, demanding exorbitant sums for rituals that yielded no reprieve. As debts mounted to a staggering $250,000 to $280,000, the dynamic shifted from spiritual guidance to sinister coercion. Within the internal world of the victims, one can only imagine the suffocating dread they felt, caught between the crushing weight of their failing business and the perceived supernatural power of a woman who wielded influence over their very existence. They were not merely victims of a physical attack, but captives of psychological entrapment that dismantled their autonomy long before the fateful day they were silenced. The true, chilling nature of crime emerged years later, revealing that the architects of this murder were driven by the cold calculus of insurance payouts. It was a murder-for-hire plot, orchestrated by Daphne Wright and executed by Bobby Guillory and his nephew, Willie Guillory, who were motivated by their own crushing poverty and the promise of $10,000. The betrayal reached its peak in the allegations that Chow Tran himself provided the keys to the apartment, a revelation that leaves investigators and the community grappling with the haunting question of complicity. Throughout the trial, the narrative of the perpetrators shifted between shifting the blame to a mastermind and claiming extreme mental manipulation. Daphne Wright, convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life without parole, remained a cold, enigmatic figure who viewed human lives as mere assets in a ledger of debt. Yet, for the detectives who labored to bring justice to Long Nguyen and Hong Lee, the resolution remains incomplete. While the physical perpetrators were held accountable, the shadow of Chow Tran, who received immunity for his testimony, lingers as a painful reminder of the complexities of justice when dealing with the darkness of the human heart, leaving a community to mourn a couple whose lives were stolen by those they once trusted to safeguard their future. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill each other for the most ridiculous reasons you could possibly imagine. A marriage, a promise to love and honor, turn into a calculated execution ground. My. I tell you, you have to be kidding me if you think you can hide the darkness behind a mask forever. Bernie James was a man who knew the value of a life. He had been a Marine, a firefighter, a paramedic. He had walked through the fire to pull others from the flames. He was a father of 3, a man who had already suffered the crushing weight of losing his first wife to an aneurysm. He was vulnerable, searching for stability, looking for a way to keep his small world from falling apart. And into that void stepped Patricia James. She had a deep, jagged scar on her face, a physical manifestation of a childhood tumor, a mark that made her feel hideous and unwanted. Bernie, good-hearted man that he was, did not see the scar. He saw the person beneath. He fell for the illusion, and in doing so, he signed his own death warrant. Patty was a master of deception, a predator who understood exactly how to exploit human empathy. She crafted a persona of a devoted, loving mother, even adopting Bernie's children to seal the trap. But behind closed doors, the reality was a nightmare of screaming matches and manipulation. She was a woman who lived in a house of cards, constantly building lies to keep her world in motion. She would scam churches, invent illnesses for her own children, and isolate her family from the world. When Bernie finally realized the monster he had married and decided to leave, her fragile ego could not handle the rejection. That would have been her 3rd divorce. To a woman like Patty, a divorce was not just a separation. It was a failure she could not permit. So she decided the only way to end the marriage was to end the man. The scene in Wilton Manors, Florida, on that night in March of 1987, was a stage performance. They found Bernie James dead in his vehicle, blunt force trauma to the side of his head, strangulation marks on his neck. Patty stood there, spinning a tale about a mysterious black man in his 20s with French accent who killed her husband for matches. It was an insult to the intelligence of any seasoned investigator. The scene was too clean. The physical evidence did not match the narrative. And the oil cans left by the car were a pathetic attempt to justify why he was out there in the first place. They always make mistakes. They always leave a thread for us to pull. As we dug deeper, the layers of her deception began to peel away like rot from a corpse. She was not just Patricia. She was Demi. She was a made-up flight attendant named TJ. She had convinced a man named Tim Ott, a gullible pawn in her sick game, that she was being abused and that Bernie was a child molester. She poisoned the well of his mind until he was willing to commit murder for her. They debated how to do it. They talked about grinding up seeds and Valium to poison him. They talked about shooting him. Ultimately, they chose a baseball bat and a piece of wire in an apartment, then moved the body back to the house to stage a robbery. When we brought Tim Ott in, the truth spilled out like water from a broken pipe. He was soft-spoken, intelligent, and utterly destroyed by the woman who had used him. He confessed to every detail, showing us the blood we found with luminol in his bedroom. He had been a puppet on a string, manipulated by a woman who had no conscience, no compassion, and absolutely no remorse. She viewed people as assets to be used, drained, and discarded. I have seen a lot of things in my time, but a woman who would invent multiple personalities to orchestrate the murder of her own husband is a special kind of evil. When we finally arrested her at her children's school, she did not fight. She simply shut down. She looked at us and claimed she did not remember anything, shifting the blame to her imaginary alter ego. It is a classic move, the last refuge of a coward. She thought she was the smartest person in the room, but in the end, she was just another inmate in a life sentence. Bernie James deserved better. He was a man who wanted to protect, and he was killed by the one person who was supposed to be his sanctuary. It is a sobering reminder that when a person closes the door at night, nobody truly knows what goes on inside that house. You have to be careful who you let into your life, because sometimes the monster is already sitting at the dinner table. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. Greed, jealousy, a dark desire to rewrite their own pathetic stories. You see the evidence, you look into the eyes of survivors, and you just have to ask yourself, what kind of person does this? My, you have to be kidding me. It was October 22nd, 1992. A quiet night in Stanton, Missouri, a place where the biggest excitement is usually the wind moving through the cornfields. But that night, the sky turned orange. A motorist saw a truck burning in a field, a sight that should never be in the middle of nowhere. When the firefighters finally doused the flames, they found a body in the passenger seat. It was a gruesome discovery, the kind that stains your memory forever. The truck was nothing but a frame, the victim unrecognizable, save for a few charred remnants, a gold chain, a ring, a watch, and a belt buckle from a hunting group. And then there was a rod in his leg, a metal pin. That was the breadcrumb that led us to Danny Coleman. Danny was a good man, a straight arrow, a guy who taught children how to handle firearms safely. He was a mechanical engineer, a hard worker who built a successful side business in flooring. He loved the outdoors, he loved his son, and he thought he had a happy home. He was wrong. The people closest to you are the ones with the best angle for the knife. Danny did not know he was sleeping next to a stranger. Karen Coleman played the part of the grieving widow, but she was a woman living a double life, drowning in drug addiction and tangled in a web of extramarital affairs. She was cold, calculated, and entirely devoid of the humanity that Danny possessed in abundance. The investigation stalled. It sat on a shelf for years, gathering dust while the truth waited in the dark. It took a deathbed confession from a convict named Larry Nolan 7 years later to blow the doors wide open. Larry had been rotting in prison, and he was bitter. He thought he was in love with Karen, that he was part of grand design, but in the end, he was just another pawn she discarded. He confessed to his cellmate that he had helped organize the hit on Danny for the insurance money. $50,000. That was the price tag on a man's life. It was a complex, twisted conspiracy. Larry pulled in James Cornhart, a local firefighter, to handle the execution. Cornhart brought in Stephen Mueller, and a shadow known only as Dozer. They lured Danny to a vacant house under the guise of an affair, beat him, and then, as Mueller eventually admitted, finished him off with 3 shots. They burned the truck in a remote field to hide the carnage. You have to be kidding me. They thought they were invisible. They were not. We had a fingerprint on a cellophane wrapper from a matchbook at the scene, locked away for 16 years. When we finally processed it against Cornhart, it was a perfect match. Science does not lie. People do. When we tapped the prison phones, we heard Cornhart asking an associate to dispose of the murder weapon, and a silencer made from a lawnmower muffler. I tell you, the stupidity of criminals is only matched by their cruelty. Karen eventually decided to save her own skin, blaming her actions on the drugs, claiming she was a new person now that she was sober. A likely story. She gave up her accomplices, traded information for a lighter sentence. She got 20 years. I was very disappointed in that. She was a murderer, too. She orchestrated the destruction of a man who loved her. She stood there and watched as her own son lost his father, all for a handful of cash. Danny Coleman was blindsided. He was an asset to this world, and he was stolen from it by people who were worth nothing. It took nearly 20 years to bring them to justice. But we got there. We got them. But you look at the cost, the time, the absolute waste of it all, and you have to wonder, is there any depth to which people will not sink? Some questions, I am afraid, have no good answers. Ensuring that those who sought to harm the vulnerable were held accountable, and that the memory of the couple's early dreams of a better life would not be forgotten. The warm morning sun of Texas usually brought a sense of quiet hope to the bustling city of Arlington, a place where diverse cultures wove together like threads in a beautiful tapestry. Among the many who had come to this vast land to build their dreams were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They were a gentle, elderly couple who had spent decades nurturing their family, carrying the rich heritage of their homeland across the ocean. Everyone in the close-knit neighborhood knew them as kind, generous souls who never harbored ill will toward anyone. They had survived hard times, built a commercial sewing business from the ground up, and always greeted their neighbors with warm smiles. Yet, on the morning of June 10th, 2012, a quiet dread began to settle over their family. It was 7:29 in the morning when Chow Tran, their 38-year-old son-in-law, stood outside their apartment with a heavy heart. The morning air was unusually still. Chow, an immigrant who worked tirelessly alongside his in-laws, felt a deep, unshakable worry. His teenage son had knocked on the front door repeatedly, but only silence answered from within. The family had begun to gather on the pavement outside, their anxiety growing with each passing minute. They noticed that one of the windows was slightly open, an unusual sight for the meticulous couple. Too terrified to enter the home themselves, they waited anxiously for the arrival of police. When Officer Weller arrived at the scene, he immediately felt the unusual gravity of the situation. It was far too early for a routine welfare check. An entire family standing together outside the apartment was a clear sign that something was deeply wrong. Upon entering the residence, the officer called out, but his voice only echoed through the quiet rooms. The apartment appeared to be in complete disarray, showing the telltale signs of a struggle. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were completely empty. The only room left to inspect was the bedroom. At first, the officer did not notice anything out of the ordinary in the dimly lit bedroom. His sole focus was finding the family and ensuring their safety. He turned to leave, hoping that perhaps they had simply gone out for an early morning walk. But as his flashlight swept across the wall, he noticed faint smudges next to a very small closet door. A sudden instinct told him to pause. With a heavy hand, he opened the closet door and made a heartbreaking discovery. There, hidden away, were the gentle grandparents, Long and Hong. They had been bound and silenced. The sheer shock of the scene left the veteran officer speechless. He walked slowly out of the bedroom into the middle of the living room, unable to use his radio for several moments as he processed the tragedy. Finally, he called for assistance, summoning the homicide investigators to the quiet apartment. When the seasoned detectives arrived, they were deeply shaken by the severity of the crime. There was evidence of a struggle near the entrance and throughout the home. with items scattered across the floor. To the investigators, it initially looked like a robbery that had taken an incredibly tragic turn. However, the sheer intensity of the act seemed far too personal for a simple burglary. To add to the mystery, several strange items had been left behind on the coffee table, including a blue bandana wrapped around a bottle. In Arlington, there were active youth groups and gangs, and the light blue color of the bandana suggested a possible connection. It almost seemed as though someone had left a calling card to claim responsibility. Yet, as the days went by, the investigators began to look at the evidence with a skeptical eye. Sometimes, a crime scene could appear too perfect, as if it had been deliberately staged to lead the police down the wrong path. While the forensic teams collected hair fibers, dust samples, and swabs of material from the scene, the detectives sat down with Chow Tran to learn more about the family. Chow, who spoke English fluently and often served as the face of the family business, explained that they had all been celebrating his father-in-law's birthday the previous evening. The elderly couple had enjoyed a wonderful night, filled with laughter and love, before being driven home around 10 o'clock. Chow explained that the family sewing business, which had once secured lucrative contracts to make beautiful garments for major commercial giants, like Disney, had fallen on incredibly difficult times by 2011. As the business began to struggle, the family looked to their traditional beliefs for a way to find hope and turn their fortunes around. For generations, their culture had held a deep respect for spiritual advisors who could offer guidance, protection, and healing during times of extreme stress, such as financial hardship or personal crisis. In their search for help, Chow and his mother-in-law had found an advertisement in a local Vietnamese newspaper for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who operated out of Houston, some 250 miles away. She claimed to possess the unique ability to lift heavy spiritual burdens and bring good fortune to those in need. Encouraged by his mother-in-law, Chow had contacted Daphne, hoping she could guide them back to prosperity. They met at her home for a detailed ritual, filled with hope that their family legacy would be saved. However, instead of bringing light and prosperity, this connection began to pull the family into a deep financial shadow. By the time of the tragedy, the family had accumulated a massive debt to the spiritual advisor, ranging between $250,000 and $280,000. Because they believed deeply in her spiritual influence, they felt trapped, pouring whatever resources they had into the continuous rituals. During the investigation, a new piece of information came to light. The detectives received a call from an insurance provider regarding a substantial life insurance policy valued at over $1 million, with Chow Tran listed as a beneficiary. Chow explained to police that because the business was tied to his in-laws, the policy was intended to protect the family and allow the business to carry on if anything were to happen to them. At the time, everyone in the family had airtight alibis for the night of the incident, and their cooperation made it difficult to establish any direct connection. The case eventually went cold for more than 2 years, leaving the family and the detectives waiting for a spark of truth. That spark finally arrived in the autumn of 2015. The police database flagged a DNA match from a small item left at the crime scene. The match belonged to Willie Guillory, a young man who had recently been convicted of felony involving the theft of a horse in Houston. Back in 2012, Willie had been only 16 years old, meaning his DNA had not been in the national database. His recent conviction as an adult finally brought his profile into the system. When the investigators questioned Willie, the young man broke down and revealed the entire truth. He admitted that he had traveled to Arlington with his uncle, Bobby Guillory, on the night of the crime. Bobby, who was 52 years old and struggling financially at the time, had been approached by Daphne Wright. Daphne had offered Bobby $10,000 to carry out the act, driven by her anger over the unpaid spiritual debts. Willie explained that they had been given a key to the apartment to make the entry seamless and had, staged the scene with a bandana and other items to make it look like the work of local gangs. With this crucial breakthrough, the police traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest Bobby Guillory. Facing the reality of the situation, Bobby also confessed, expressing deep remorse for his actions. He confirmed that Daphne Wright was a mastermind behind the entire plot, dictating how everything should unfold. Most shockingly, Bobby claimed that the key to the apartment had come directly from Chow Tran. The detectives immediately focused their efforts on Daphne Wright, arresting her at her Houston home. A search of her residence revealed detailed ledgers listing massive fees for her spiritual services, showing that she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for her rituals. Facing the overwhelming evidence, the prosecutors knew they needed Chow Tran's testimony to ensure conviction against the primary organizers of the crime. In exchange for his full cooperation and testimony, Chow was offered immunity. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow took the stand and painted a vivid picture of Daphne as an incredibly controlling and greedy individual who used her perceived spiritual powers to manipulate and pressure his family. The defense argued that Chow was far more involved than he admitted, pointing to the substantial insurance payouts that had gone directly to him. Nevertheless, the jury listened closely to the evidence presented over the weeks of the trial. In September 2019, the trial concluded with a decisive verdict. Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the tragedy. Though the road to justice was long and complex, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu remained a shining light for their community. Their legacy of hard work, kindness, and devotion to their family would never be forgotten, serving as a reminder that even in the face of great challenges, the truth will always find its way into the light, bringing peace and healing to those who cherish the values of love and family. The morning sun rose over Arlington, Texas, casting a warm, golden glow across the quiet suburban neighborhoods. Arlington was a grand and sprawling city nestled in Tarrant County, a place where diverse cultures converged like rivers joining a great ocean. For decades, it had been a sanctuary for families seeking new beginnings, a place where dreams were nurtured by hard work and neighborly kindness. Among the many who had made this vibrant city their home was a large and close-knit Vietnamese community, whose members had brought with them their rich heritage, their profound traditions, and an unshakable belief in the power of family unity. At the heart of this community were Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, a deeply devoted elderly couple who had spent their lives building a legacy of love and dedication. They had immigrated to the United States of America in the year 2000, leaving behind the familiar landscapes of Vietnam to embark on an extraordinary journey of hope. They brought with them their 3 beloved children, determined to carve out a peaceful and prosperous life. Long and Hong were the very definition of gentle souls. They were known throughout their neighborhood as sweet, generous, and incredibly hard-working individuals who never harbored ill will toward anyone. They spent their days tending to their family, sharing traditional meals, and offering warm smiles to everyone they encountered. To support their family and establish a foundation for future generations, Long and Hong started a commercial sewing business. They poured their hearts into the enterprise, working long hours to ensure its success. Recognizing the talent and dedication of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, they enlisted his help to manage the business. Chow, a 38-year-old man who spoke English with confidence, became the public face of the company. He handled negotiations, spoke with suppliers, and worked diligently to secure contracts. For nearly a decade, their efforts bore fruit. The family experienced the ultimate realization of their American dream when they secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a globally renowned commercial giant, a company famous for its magic and beloved by children worldwide. However, the tides of fortune are ever shifting. By the year 2011, the bright skies that had once shone upon the family business began to gather clouds. The highly valued contract came to an end, and without its steady support, the sewing business began to experience a gentle but persistent decline. Financial strain began to whisper through the corridors of their lives, bringing with it a sense of quiet anxiety. In times of uncertainty, human beings often look backward to the ancient wisdom of their ancestors, searching for meaning and guidance. Long and Hong, alongside their family, believed deeply in the spiritual traditions of their homeland. For thousands of years, their culture had honored ancestral spirits and sought the blessings of benevolent guardians of prosperity. They believed that when a family faced a sudden wave of misfortune, it was often a result of unseen spiritual imbalances that required the guidance of a wise protector. Desperate to restore harmony and protect the business they had worked so hard to build, Chao Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, began searching for a spiritual advisor who could help them lift what they perceived to be a heavy cloud of bad luck. In the pages of a local Vietnamese newspaper, they discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor residing in Houston, a city located approximately 250 miles away. The advertisement promised spiritual healing, protection, and the removal of negative energies that hindered success. Encouraged by Hong, Chow made contact with the advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright. Daphne Wright was a prominent figure in her Houston community. She was married, had 3 daughters, and was widely regarded as the driving force of her household. To those who sought her services, she appeared to be a powerful and confident guide capable of turning fortunes around. Chow traveled to Houston for an initial consultation, where Daphne performed a traditional ritual aimed at restoring peace and prosperity to the family. Sewing business, filled with a renewed sense of hope, Chow and Hong believed that their struggles would soon be over and that bright days would return. But the spiritual guidance they sought soon transformed into a complicated web of financial obligation. Over the course of a year, the business did not experience the rapid recovery they had prayed for. Instead of advising them to seek practical business solutions, Daphne encouraged the family to invest deeper into more elaborate and frequent rituals. Trusting her completely, and terrified of the spiritual consequences of stopping, the family continued to pour their hard-earned money into her services. Because they could not pay the enormous fees up front, Daphne allowed them to run up a massive debt on credit, a sum that eventually ballooned to somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. This staggering debt became a silent, heavy weight on the family, clouding their happiness and leading them down a path of deep vulnerability. Then, on the morning of June 10th, in the year 2012, a sudden and profound tragedy struck the quiet Arlington neighborhood. At 7:29 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a worried phone call from Chow Tran. He requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, explaining that his family had gathered outside the couple's apartment and noticed that a window was unusually open and things did not look right. Chow's teenage son had knocked on the door, but there was only silence. The first responding officer to arrive at the scene was Officer Weller, a dedicated public servant with 14 years of experience. Walking into the quiet apartment, the officer initially observed signs of what appeared to be a standard burglary. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered across the floor and furniture moved out of place. Officer Weller called out, but no voice answered. The kitchen and bathroom were empty. The officer walked into the bedroom, looking around to ensure the safety of the residents. Seeing no one, the officer turned to leave, believing the family might have simply gone out for an early morning walk. But as the officer turned toward the door, a small detail caught the eye. Hand smudges on the wall, next to a very small closet. Guided by a profound sense of duty, Officer Weller hesitated, then gently opened the closet door. Inside, the officer made a heartbreaking discovery. Long and Hong were there, silent and still. They had been bound in silence with duct tape. In that split second, the officer knew that the sweet, gentle couple had passed away. Shocked by the tragic scene, the officer stepped back into the living room and immediately requested the assistance of A, supervisor in a specialized crime scene unit. When the homicide investigators arrived, led by a seasoned detective with 21 years of experience, they were deeply moved by the tragedy. The scene was incredibly solemn. It was clear that a struggle had occurred near the entrance, and the couple had been moved to the back room. The investigators also found curious items left behind: a plate of crushed prescription pills on the coffee table, a hand-rolled cigarette, and a light blue bandana wrapped around a green glass bottle. To an observer, these items seemed to point directly to the presence of youth gangs that were known to operate in the area. However, the experienced detectives remained thoughtful and analytical. Sometimes, a scene that appears too perfect is actually a carefully constructed puzzle. The placement of the gang colors and the scattered items felt theatrical, as if someone had deliberately staged the apartment to divert attention from the true sequence of events. The detectives gathered every piece of physical evidence with absolute care, collecting hair fibers, swabbing for dual samples of biological material, and sending the hand-rolled cigarette to the laboratory to extract any potential genetic profiles. To understand the couple's lives, the investigators turned to family. Chow Tran, speaking as a primary voice for the grieving relatives due to his fluent English, explained that the family had spent the previous evening celebrating Long's birthday. They had shared a joyful dinner, played cards until after 10 o'clock in the evening, and the elderly couple had been driven home safely. Chow expressed utter disbelief that anyone would want to harm his in-laws, describing them as peaceful souls who had no enemies. As the days unfolded, a routine notification from an insurance provider introduced a new dimension to the narrative. The company informed the detectives that there were substantial life insurance policies active for the couple, totaling at least $1 million, with Chow Tran named as a beneficiary. When questioned about this, Chow cooperatively explained that the policies were established to ensure the continuity of the commercial sewing business in the event of an unforeseen loss. Since Chow and his family possessed solid, verified accounts of their whereabouts on the night of the tragedy, and because their genetic profiles did not match the evidence collected from the apartment, the investigation entered a quiet phase. For 2 long years, the dedicated officers continued to search for answers, leaving no stone unturned, but the trail remained silent. The breakthrough came in the year 2015, through an entirely unexpected turn of events. A 16-year-old youth in the year 2012, named Willie Guillory, had grown into adulthood and was arrested in Houston for a felony involving the taking of a horse. Because a felony conviction required the submission of a genetic profile to the national database, Willie's details were entered into the system for the first time. Within days, the laboratory confirmed a perfect match between Willie's profile and the genetic material recovered from the hand-rolled cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene. Detectives immediately traveled to secure Willie Guillory. Confronted with the scientific evidence, the young man broke down in tears and offered a full confession. He explained that he had been led astray by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a 52-year-old man who was struggling deeply with financial hardship and unemployment. Bobby had been approached by Daphne Wright, who offered him $10,000 to carry out a dark deed. Daphne, driven by a desire to collect on the massive debt owed to her, had planned the entire event. She had obtained a key to the apartment, which she provided to Bobby. With this crucial information, the police arrested Bobby Guillory on December 16th, 2015. Bobby, who had no prior history of conflict with the law, expressed deep remorse and confirmed his nephew's account. He revealed that Daphne had become a demanding creditor, and when she learned of the substantial insurance policies, she decided to orchestrate the tragedy to ensure she would be paid. In a startling revelation, Bobby alleged that the key to the apartment had originally been provided by Chow Tran himself, who had placed it under a doormat. The detectives focused their attention on Daphne Wright, securing an arrest warrant and searching her Houston home in the late summer of 2016. Inside her residence, they discovered a detailed business ledger outlining enormous fees, ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 for her spiritual services. When interviewed, Daphne remained quiet and reserved, requesting the presence of her legal representative. Faced with the mounting evidence, prosecutors sought to establish a complete and undeniable truth for the court. They offered Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his full, honest testimony, viewing him as a crucial link to hold the primary coordinator accountable. In his testimony during the trial in August of 2019, Chow portrayed a dramatic picture of a family caught in the grip of fear and superstition. He described how they believed Daphne possessed absolute power over their lives and fortunes, and how the fear of a spiritual curse had clouded their rational judgment. He claimed that the pressure of the debt had created an atmosphere of despair, leading to the ultimate tragedy. The trial concluded with a profound sense of justice and reflection. The jury found Daphne Wright guilty, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced the legal consequences of their actions, finding a path toward accountability and redemption. The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu is a gentle reminder of the enduring strength of family, the dangers of allowing superstition to override reason, and the ultimate triumph of truth. In the heart of Arlington, the memory of the sweet, hard-working couple lives on, inspiring their community to cherish their elders, protect one another, and always walk in the light of honesty and love. The summer breeze in Arlington, Texas, carried the heavy, sweet scent of blooming jasmine and the distant rhythmic hum of sewing machines. It was a sound that had become the heartbeat of the Nguyen family household. In the center of the sunlit living room, an elderly couple sat side by side, sharing a pot of freshly brewed green tea. Long Nguyen and his wife, Hong Lu, had spent more than half a century together, their lives woven together like the intricate patterns of the textiles they worked with every day. When they first arrived in the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, they brought very little in the way of material wealth. What they did possess, however, was an abundance of hope, a shared work ethic that knew no limits, and a deep, abiding love for their 3 children and grandchildren. They had settled in Tarrant County, joining a vibrant, close-knit Vietnamese community that had thrived in the area since the late 20th century. For Long and Hong, Arlington was not just a place to live. It was a fertile ground where their American dream would finally take root. They established a small commercial sewing business, a venture born out of passion and necessity. With their limited English, they relied heavily on their son-in-law, Chow Tran, a charismatic and articulate 38-year-old immigrant who quickly became the public face of the enterprise. Chow handled the contracts, spoke with the suppliers, and navigated the complex business landscape of their new homeland. Together, the family worked late into the night, the steady click-clack of the needles producing garments of exceptional quality. Their dedication paid off when they secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture apparel for a global entertainment giant, an achievement that felt like the ultimate validation of their sacrifices. Yet, as the years passed, the unpredictable tides of commerce began to shift. By the year 2011, the crucial contract was lost, and the steady stream of orders began to dry up. The once bustling workshop grew quiet, and a heavy cloud of financial worries settled over the household. In times of deep distress, people often reach back to the ancient traditions of their ancestors, seeking comfort and guidance in beliefs that have survived for generations. For Long and Hong, this meant looking toward the spiritual customs of their homeland, hoping to find a way to lift what they perceived as a persistent cloud of misfortune. Chapter 2, The Search for Harmony. To understand the choices that followed, one must understand the profound cultural significance of spiritual harmony in the minds of many traditional families. For thousands of years, the pursuit of good fortune, prosperity, and protection from negative energies has been deeply intertwined with daily life. When a family faces a major crisis, such as the threat of bankruptcy or deep personal discord, it is common to seek the counsel of a spiritual advisor, a guy believed to possess the unique ability to restore balance and ward off unseen obstacles. Chow Tran, anxious to see the family business return to its former glory, searched through the pages of a local Vietnamese newspaper. It was there that he found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located in Houston, approximately 250 miles away. The woman, Daphne Wright, claimed to possess rare abilities to dissolve curses and invite abundant good fortune into the lives of her clients. Eager to find a solution, Chow shared the discovery with his mother-in-law, Hong, who felt a glimmer of renewed hope. Chow made the journey to Houston to meet with Daphne at her suburban home. During their initial consultation, Daphne performed an elaborate ritual designed to cleanse the family of their negative energy and pave the way for commercial success. For a brief moment, the family felt a sense of relief, believing that their fortunes were about to turn. However, the path they had chosen was fraught with unforeseen complications. Rather than finding financial freedom, they found themselves drawn into a complex web of escalating spiritual demands. Daphne began to insist on more frequent, increasingly expensive rituals, claiming that the dark forces affecting the family business were far stronger than initially anticipated. Over the course of several months, the debt began to mount because the family had no paper records or formal agreements. The financial obligations grew informally but inexorably, eventually ballooning to a sum between $250,000 and $280,000. Chapter 3. The morning of June 10. On the morning of June 10, 2012, the early sun began to warm the brick exterior of the quiet apartment complex in Arlington. At 7:29 in the morning, an emergency dispatcher received a call from a distressed Chow Tran. His voice trembled as he requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, explaining that his teenage son had gone to knock on their door but had received no response. Dispatcher, can you give me their names? Chow Tran. My dad's name is Long. Last name Wngyn. He is 70-something right now. Dispatcher. Okay, I will send our officers now. The responding officers arrived quickly at the scene, noting that several family members were already gathered outside, their faces etched with deep concern. An open window and an unusual silence within the apartment immediately signaled that this was not a routine welfare check. Officer Weller was the first to cross the threshold. The interior of the apartment was in a state of complete disarray, presenting all the classic hallmarks of a burglary. Drawers were pulled open, compact discs were scattered across the floor, and furniture was overturned. Officer Weller called out, but his voice only echoed through the empty rooms. After checking the living room, kitchen, and bathroom, he entered the master bedroom. Turning to leave, Officer Weller's flashlight illuminated a series of dark smudges on the wall adjacent to a small, clochette door. A sense of professional intuition made him hesitate. Taking a slow, deep breath, he pulled the closet door open. Inside, the tragic reality unfolded. Long Nguyen and Hong lay motionless, bound tightly with duct tape. It was immediately clear to the experienced officer that they had passed away. Shocked by the gravity of the scene, Officer Weller stepped back into the living room and immediately radioed for a supervisor and a specialized crime scene unit. Chapter 4. Unraveling the stage scene. When the homicide detectives arrived, they were met with a scene that was exceptionally violent and deeply unsettling. Long-serving investigators, some with over 21 years of experience in the homicide division, remarked that this was one of the most difficult cases they had ever encountered. The physical evidence suggested that a fierce struggle had taken place near the entrance of the apartment before the victims were moved. Yet, as the crime scene technicians began their meticulous work, Several details began to strike the detectives as unusual. On the coffee table lay a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette, seemingly left out in plain view. More curious still was a light blue bandana wrapped carefully around a beer bottle left on the counter. While these items initially suggested the involvement of local street gangs known for extorting neighborhood businesses, the detectives remained skeptical. The sheer level of planning required to bind the victims stood in stark contrast to the careless abandonment of such obvious calling cards. It felt almost too convenient, as if someone had deliberately arranged a scene to steer the investigation away from the home. The detectives began to theorize that the burglary was staged. To confirm their suspicions, they collected the physical evidence, including the marijuana cigarette, hair fibers, and DNA swabs, and sent them to the forensic laboratory for immediate analysis. Meanwhile, the investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Stewart received a routine inquiry from an insurance company. It revealed that a life insurance policy valued at approximately $1 million had been taken out on the elderly couple. When detectives inquired about the designated beneficiaries, they discovered that the primary recipient of the funds was none other than Chow Tran. Chapter 5: The Catalyst of Justice. For more than 2 years, the investigation made little progress. The DNA profiles recovered from the crime scene did not match any of the family members, nor did they correspond to any existing profiles within the National Criminal Database. The case grew cold, leaving the community and the investigators waiting for a breakthrough. That breakthrough finally arrived in October of the year 2015. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston on a felony charge of horse theft because he had recently transitioned into adulthood and was now facing a felony conviction. His DNA profile was entered into the federal database for the first time. Within days, the system flagged a perfect match between Willie Guillory and the DNA recovered from a marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene in 2012. At the time of the offense, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not previously appeared in the system. On October 17, 2015, investigators brought Willie in for questioning. When confronted with the scientific certainty of the DNA evidence, the young man broke down and confessed, revealing that he had not acted alone. He explained that his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a trip to Arlington on the night of the crime, promising him that they were simply going to assist a friend with a personal matter. Willie Guillory: the plan that my uncle ended up coming up with was throw stuff around, help him set up some evidence to make it look like thugs or gang members ended up committing the crime. Willie's confession provided the missing link, revealing that the entire tragedy was an orchestrated murder-for-hire plot. The driving force behind the plan, according to Willie, was a spiritual advisor from Houston, Daphne Wright. Chapter 6: The Shadowy Ledger. Following Willie's detailed revelation, detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest 52-year-old Bobby Guillory. Confronted with his nephew's confession and the looming weight of physical evidence, Bobby chose to cooperate, confirming that Daphne Wright had offered him $10,000 to carry out the act. Bobby described Daphne as a commanding figure who exercised immense psychological influence over her clients. He explained that when Chow Tran and Hong Lu fell deep into debt due to the escalating cost of her spiritual services, Daphne began to look for alternative ways to collect the money she believed she was owed. Knowing about the substantial life insurance policies, Daphne allegedly suggested a dark plan to resolve the outstanding balance. Detective: how did Daphne get the key to the apartment? Bobby Guillory: from Chow Tran. She told me that is where she got the key from. Armed with this critical testimony, investigators obtained a search warrant for Daphne's Houston residence. Inside the home, detectives discovered a series of financial ledgers. The pages detailed extraordinary fees charged to various clients for spiritual services. including sums of $20,000, $30,000, and $40,000. The discovery of the ledger provided clear, documented evidence of the financial motivations driving the spiritual advisor, showing the jury that her practice was less about spiritual guidance and more about a calculated system of financial exploitation. Chapter 7. The Verdict and the Search for Truth. In August of the year 2019, the state of Texas brought Daphne Wright to trial. The courtroom was filled with community members, investigators, and family, all seeking closure after 7 long years of waiting. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the testimony of Chow Tran, who had been granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full cooperation and truthful testimony against the primary orchestrators. On the witness stand, Chow described Daphne as an incredibly manipulative individual who used his cultural beliefs to control his actions and dictate his family's decisions. The defense argued vigorously that Chow was using Daphne as a scapegoat to shield himself from his own financial greed, pointing out that the insurance payout of $850,000 had ultimately gone directly into Chow's hands. After hours of careful deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charges of capital murder. Daphne Wright was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory also faced severe legal consequences for their roles in the conspiracy. The family wanted to ensure they had the financial stability to maintain the business and support the grandchildren if anything were to happen to the elders. Furthermore, Chow and his family members provided airtight alibis for the night of the tragedy, explaining that they had been celebrating Long's birthday at a family gathering until late in the evening. The cold case years. For a long time, the investigation hit a wall. Police collected DNA samples and fingerprints from dozens of people, including family members, neighbors, and business associates. The DNA recovered from a marijuana cigarette left at the scene did not match anyone in the national database, because the database did not contain profiles of minors or individuals without prior felony convictions. The trail went cold. For more than 2 entire years, there was no progress. The family tried to move on. The sewing business closed its doors, and the community wondered if justice would ever be served. The break in the case. The turning point arrived unexpectedly on October 12, 2015, more than 3 years after the tragedy. A curious arrest. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for a felony involving the theft of a horse, because a felony conviction requires the collection of a DNA sample for the national database. Willie's profile was uploaded. Almost immediately, the system flagged a perfect match. Willie's DNA matched the genetic material left on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene from 2012. At the time of the murders, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not previously appeared in the system. On October 17, 2015, investigators brought Willie in for questioning. When presented with the scientific evidence linking him to the apartment, the young man broke down in tears and confessed. Willie Guillory, I was there and I helped, but I did not do this alone. It was my uncle, Bobby Guillory, who took me there. Willie explained that his uncle, Bobby, had instructed him to help stage the apartment to look like a gang-related burglary. They had brought the blue bandana, the beer bottle, the crushed pills, and the marijuana to mislead the police. Most importantly, Willie revealed that they had been hired to carry out the act by a woman named Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor's true face. Following Willie's confession, police moved quickly to arrest 52-year-old Bobby Guillory at his home in Katy, Texas. On December 16, 2015, Bobby's confession. Confronted with the search warrants in his nephew's statement, Bobby also confessed. He explained that in 2012, he had been unemployed, desperate, and struggling to survive. Daphne Wright had approached him with an offer of $10,000 to carry out the deed. According to Bobby, Daphne operated less like a spiritual healer and more like a financial predator. Plus, the accumulation of debt. Plus, original spiritual consultations and minor rituals. Additional fees for complex curse-lifting ceremonies. Services provided on credit over several months. Total accumulated debt, $250,000 to $280,000. Plus, when the family was unable to pay this massive sum, Daphne became demanding. Knowing about the substantial life insurance policies held by the family, she allegedly devised a plan to collect the debt through the insurance payout. The key to the apartment. When investigators asked Bobby how he had gained access to the apartment without forcing the lock, Bobby dropped a bombshell. He asserted that Daphne had given him a physical key to the residence. When investigators asked where Daphne had obtained the key, Bobby claimed she had received it directly from Chow Tran. The trial and the search for peace. With this critical information, detectives secured an arrest warrant for Daphne Wright at her Houston home. During a search of her residence, investigators discovered detailed financial ledgers. These documents revealed that Daphne had been charging clients tens of thousands of dollars for various spiritual services, confirming her highly lucrative and controlling operation. A complex legal path. To secure a conviction against the primary organizer of the crime, prosecutors faced a difficult decision. They needed a direct witness to connect Daphne to the financial transactions and the key. Consequently, the state offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, truthful testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow took the stand. He portrayed Daphne as an incredibly manipulative figure who exercised intense psychological control over his family, leading them to believe that failing to pay her would result in severe spiritual ruin. While the defense argued that Chow was motivated primarily by the insurance payout of $850,000, the jury ultimately focused on the actions of conspirators. The verdict and legacy. In September 2019, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder. She received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Both Bobby and Willie Guillory were also held accountable for their roles in the tragedy. Though the legal process was long and filled with complex details, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong remains cherished by those who knew them. Their journey to America was defined by hard work, devotion to family, and a deep respect for their cultural heritage. The story serves as a gentle reminder of the importance of community support, the need to protect vulnerable loved ones, and the enduring hope that truth and justice will always find a way to light the path forward. The summer sun of Texas has a way of stretching across the horizon like a sheet of hammered gold, casting long amber shadows over the quiet suburban pockets of Arlington. It was the morning of June 10th in the year 2012, a Sunday that began with the gentle hum of cicadas and the faint scent of damp grass. For the officers of the Arlington Police Department, the day promised the usual quiet routine of weekend patrols. But for Detective Stewart, a veteran of 21 years in the Homicide Division, and his colleagues, this particular morning would forever be etched in their memories as a turning point. A profound reminder of how easily the brightest dreams could be shadowed by human frailty. The call came into the Emergency Dispatch Center at precisely 7:29 in the morning. A voice, trembling with anxiety that transcended language barriers, identified himself as Chow Tran, a 38-year-old immigrant who had come to the United States in search of a peaceful life. He was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. His voice was a tight knot of worry as he explained to the dispatcher that his teenage son and other family members had gone to the apartment to check on the couple, only to find the residence silent, the windows strangely open, and an unsettling air of disarray clinging to the home. When Officer Weller arrived at the scene, He found the family gathered outside the apartment complex. There was an unnatural stillness in the air. Welfare checks were common, but they rarely occurred so early in the morning, and it was rarer still to find an entire family waiting on the pavement, too terrified to step inside. The open window, the quiet breeze rustling the curtains, and the heavy silence from within painted a picture that instantly set the officer on high alert. Upon crossing the threshold, the physical signs of disturbance were immediately apparent. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered across the floor and furniture shifted from its usual place. Mimicking the aftermath of a chaotic burglary, Officer Weller called out, his voice echoing through the small apartment, but only silence answered him. He moved through the kitchen and the bathroom, finding them empty. Finally, he approached the master bedroom. At first glance, the bedroom appeared vacant, and a temporary wave of relief washed over the officer. He reasoned that perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk, escaping the heat of the day. But as he turned to leave, his flashlight beam caught something unusual. Near a small closet door, there were faint hand smudges on the wall, as if someone had reached out in a moment of desperate struggle. Following his instincts, Officer Weller hesitated. A quiet voice inside told him to prepare for the worst. He gently pulled open the closet door, and the scene that lay before him was one of profound sadness. There, bound together, were the elderly mother and father. They had been bound with heavy duct tape, their faces covered, silent and still. It was clear in an instant that their lives had been tragically cut short. The shock was immediate for an officer with 14 years of experience, and for Detective Stewart with over 2 decades in homicide. The sheer weight of the scene was overwhelming. This was not merely a robbery. It was a deeply personal and violent act. The initial investigation revealed that the victims had suffered blunt force trauma, possibly from a heavy tool. But the ultimate cause of their passing was the suffocating confinement of the tape itself. It was a tragedy that defied comprehension. Who would wish harm upon an elderly, gentle couple who had spent their lives working quietly and building a family? Long Nguyen and Hong Lu had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000. Like many before them, they came with hearts full of hope and a desire to build a legacy for their 3 children and many grandchildren. They settled in Arlington, a vibrant city in Tarrant County known for its diverse and welcoming community, including a large and active Vietnamese population that had flourished since the late 20th century. The couple established a commercial sewing business, utilizing their traditional skills to manufacture garments. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who spoke fluent English and became the public face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and securing prominent clients. For nearly a decade, their dedication paid off, culminating in a lucrative contract with a major commercial giant, a milestone that felt like the absolute realization of their American dream. However, by the year 2011, the tide of fortune began to turn. The major contract was lost, and the sewing business struggled to stay afloat. In moments of deep financial distress, people often reach back to the ancient traditions of their homeland, seeking comfort and answers in the spiritual realm. For generations, many cultures have believed in spiritual guides who can offer protection, lift perceived curses, and restore harmony to a household. Desperate to save the family business and protect their loved ones from what they believed was a streak of spiritual bad luck, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, searched a local Vietnamese newspaper. There, they found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located in Houston, nearly 250 miles away. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, claimed she possessed the power to lift heavy curses and bring prosperity to those in need. Hoping for a miracle, the family reached out to her. Daphne agreed to perform rituals designed to turn their fortunes around. The family felt a temporary surge of hope, believing that their dedication to these ancient traditions would surely guide them back to prosperity. But as the months passed, the business did not recover. Instead of finding financial relief, the family found themselves trapped in a different kind of burden. Unknown to many, the spiritual services came at an extraordinary cost. Daphne Wright began to charge astronomical fees for her rituals, extending credit to the family as their desperation grew. Over the course of a year, the debt ballooned to an incredible sum, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. The weight of this secret debt pressed heavily on the family, creating a quiet desperation behind the closed doors of their suburban home. At the crime scene, detectives discovered several peculiar items that seemed designed to lead them down a specific path. A blue bandana was found wrapped around a beer bottle, and a partially burned hand-rolled cigarette lay on the table alongside crushed pills. To a casual observer, these items suggested the involvement of local street gangs, which were known to operate in certain areas. But to the seasoned eyes of Detective Stewart, the scene felt almost too orchestrated, as if someone had deliberately placed these items to stage a burglary and divert attention. As the investigation progressed, detectives began to look closely at the financial aspect of the family. They discovered that there were substantial life insurance policies in place, totaling at least $1 million, with Chow Tran named as a beneficiary. While Chow cooperated fully with the police and provided a solid alibi for the night of the tragedy, explaining that the entire family had been celebrating his father-in-law's birthday until late in the evening, the presence of such a significant financial motive kept detectives watchful. For more than 2 years, the case grew quiet. Investigators followed every lead, interviewing dozens of neighbors, family members, and business associates. But the genetic evidence recovered from a hand-rolled cigarette did not match any profiles in the national database. In the year 2012, the science of genetic matching was advanced, but it relied on existing profiles of individuals who had prior felony convictions. The breakthrough came unexpectedly in the autumn of the year 2015. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston on an unrelated felony charge involving the theft of a horse, because he had reached adulthood and was now convicted of felony. His genetic profile was entered into the combined DNA index system for the first time. Within days, a match was flagged. The genetic material on the cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene years prior belonged to Willie Guillory, who had been only 16 years old at the time of the tragedy. When detectives brought Willie in for questioning, the young man was quickly overwhelmed by the reality of the evidence. He broke down and confessed, explaining that he had not acted alone. He had been led to Arlington by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a middle-aged man who was struggling financially and looking for a way to escape poverty. According to Willie, the entire plan had been orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Daphne had allegedly approached Bobby, offering him $10,000 to carry out a dark deed to resolve a debt that she claimed was owed to her. She had provided them with a key to the apartment, allowing them to enter and stage the scene to look like a random gang incident. The arrest of Bobby Guillory shortly thereafter confirmed Willie's account. Bobby confessed to his involvement, expressing deep remorse and fear. He painted a picture of Daphne Wright as a highly commanding figure who ruled her household and her clients with absolute authority. To her followers, she was a person of immense spiritual power, capable of dictating their fortunes and their lives. When search warrants were executed at Daphne's home in Houston, detectives discovered detailed ledger books. These books revealed that she had been charging clients tens of thousands of dollars for spiritual services, including the removal of curses. The scale of the operation was staggering, showing how easily vulnerable individuals could be drawn into a web of financial exploitation under the guise of ancient mysticism. The investigation eventually revealed a deeply complex dynamic between Chow Tran, his late mother-in-law, and Daphne. Under questioning, Chow explained the intense psychological hold he believed Daphne had over their family. He claimed they were terrified of her perceived spiritual powers, believing that if she could lift a curse, she could just as easily place a devastating one upon them. In their desperation, they felt trapped, believing that the only way to satisfy the debt and protect the rest of the family was through extreme sacrifice. To secure a conviction against the individual they believed was the true mastermind behind the tragedy, prosecutors made a difficult decision to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his full and honest testimony. During the trial in the year 2019, Chow testified extensively about the financial demands made by Daphne and the intense pressure his family experienced. The defense argued that Chow was far more involved than he admitted, suggesting that the motive was purely financial and that he had used the spiritual narrative to shield himself. The jury, after carefully weighing the extensive evidence, found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in conspiracy. For the community of Arlington and the family of Long Nguyen and Hong Le, the journey through the legal system brought a quiet resolution, though the memory of the gentle couple remained a poignant reminder of the importance of community, support, clear communication, and the dangers of allowing desperation to cloud one's judgment. The story, while born of a dark moment, ultimately highlighted the tireless dedication of the investigators who spent years pursuing the truth, ensuring